Well, Shalom Torah fans, as I promised, we have with us from deep East Texas, outside of Houston, Texas, Sal Baldovino. Sal is a web designer. He's a video editor. He has a web hub where he reaches out around the world to really introduce people to the Hebrew roots of the faith for messianic, for Torah observant people who are coming back to the roots of the faith that was once delivered to the saints. Sal, it's good to have you with us.
Shalom. Thank you for having me, Michael.
Sal, tell us a little bit about your background. You obviously were not born into the Hebrew roots of the faith of the Messianic community, being down there in Texas. This is of recent, I would say, probably the last 25, 30 years that this is really. There's been a great awakening, as I've seen throughout Texas, having lived there myself. To give us a little bit of your background, where you came from.
Sure. I was born in a small little country in Central America called Nicaragua. My mother and I moved to the States when I was around 5 years old, and then we ended up in Texas, where I've lived for the last 20 plus years. I attended high school and college here and got my degree as a web developer. Met my wife and started our family and really just got into this Hebrew roots through her parents.
And you moved out of Houston, which is a big metropolitan area. You got out there, really out in the sticks there to raise your children in a little bit more wholesome environment, did you not?
Definitely. I think the first step was to get them out of public school. We only had one of our six kids go to first grade. And from there, we pulled them out of the public educational system and we started homeschooling. And that was kind
Mm-hmm.
of the first step into really removing ourselves from the system, if you will. Um, as I progressed in my career as a web developer, I was working for some of Houston's largest web agencies that allowed me the opportunity to work from home. So while in Houston, I worked from home for about a year, and then the cards kind of fell in our lap that we had to leave our home. We got an email from our landlord that said we have 90 days to leave
Mm,
because she sold the property. Thankfully,
yeah.
through his means, she sold the property to a friend of hers, and he gave us 90 days to leave the house, and he said he would extend it if it got to be any longer than that. So we had this plan that we were going to rent for another year and just see what happens. And then things just started to fall into place. Got approved for a loan, zero down USDA finance, uh, 12 acres out in deep East Texas with a house. And as of 2 months ago, we moved out of Babylon, if you will, of Houston, and out to
Uh,
this.
well, you have continued on. You have developed a website and a web presence. Tell us a little bit about what your website is all about.
Sure. Around 2012, one of my secular friends, whom I had met through a marketing organization that I sat on the chair on, his name is Scott. He reached out to me, and ironically, he had seen a video that I posted on Facebook that was your Easter teaching. He reached out to me through private message and said, "Hey, I really enjoyed that video that you posted. Have you ever heard of 119 Ministries? I've been following them lately." One thing led to another. We became partners and we created this website called Teshuva Ministries.net. And it essentially acts as an aggregate hub for Hebrew roots teaching from Michael Rood, Rico Cortez, Bill Cloud, 119 Ministries, so on and so forth.
Hmm.
We were able to pull all of those resources into one spot and categorize them in such a way that new believers could find a way to get information like feast days, appointed times, Sabbath, and have all of those in one section for them to be able to kind of download it all.
Ah, well, that is excellent. So now you have a not only the fellowship there in your home, but this is really a way to reach out around the world. Are you seeing people waking up? You're from Nicaragua originally. Your English is there's not much of an accent there. Did you learn English while you were in Nicaragua?
No, just moved here and just acquired the language through osmosis. And honestly,
Oh,
I
uh-huh.
forgot a lot of my Spanish, and I don't carry an accent. The only accent I do carry is probably more of a Texas
Yeah,
Southern
yeah,
accent at times.
yeah. You got a bit of a Texas drawl there. You sound like a cowboy from way back there. And yeah, being in Texas, living in San Antonio myself for some time, it really is a very rich cultural heritage there because being on the border with Mexico and the Texicans down there, and we see that for the most part they that part of the world really was all converted over into Roman Catholicism. And this is something you came out of. What was it that, when you started to wake up to the Hebrew roots of the faith, what was it that really that really drew you in, that became answers for you?
I would have to say that coming out of the Roman Catholic Church, just I think all of us had questions, right? Where are the dinosaurs? What is Adam and Eve's relationship to everything? How did the flood really happen? All of the questions that most pastors, priests, whomever just don't feel comfortable talking about, or they'll set you aside and just kind of brush it off like, oh, he's just got questions and I don't really want to answer him at this point. So that's what really turned me off to religious institution for a really long time. Um, and my mom kind of dragged me to and from the Mormon church, the Baptist church, the Lutheran church, every church that you could possibly think of when I was really young. And so by the time I got to high school, I was just kind of done with it. I still believed in Yeshua, I still believed in God. I wanted to have a personal relationship and not necessarily have to go to a building to reflect that relationship.
Yeah.
When I met my wife, she invited me to a Messianic synagogue that her parents had been attending for a few years. They had formed relationships in there and deep bonds. Um, and I said, okay, I'll go for my girlfriend. And I went and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the fellowship. I enjoyed the music. It was something that had been lacking in my life for a very long time. As we grew into becoming members of the synagogue and more relationships with people, it just kind of grew out of necessity and politics, if you will, that we needed to step aside from that and start our own home.
Mm-hmm. Well, tell me. There are so many variations. In Christianity, we got 33,000 denominations, but yet in the Hebrew roots and Messianic world, there's a lot of division. There's a lot of divergence in that, and sometimes when we've got something wrong in house, we just have to admit it and move on. And did you find yourself in that situation of just needing to step aside? You say for political reasons, but can you be a little more specific for us, Sal?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question? I lost a little connection.
Oh, okay. I was asking for a little more clarity. You said that because of the politics in this particular congregation, that
Right.
you moved aside from that, and we've got problems. I mean, as we're exploring and trying to figure out, okay, what is it supposed to look like? A lot of times we find out what it's not supposed to look like before we figure out what it is supposed to look like. What happened for you to step aside?
So a lot of it was doctrine and just things that they were introducing into teaching, and who was and was not allowed to teach. There was a lot of um, just ambiguity of who the leadership could be or could not be. They had a mentality that the Torah was for the Jews, but it wasn't really for Gentiles. If they wanted to keep it, it was fine. And I think the straw that broke the camel's back was when they started introducing Rick Warren's book into the teaching instead of the Torah. They were kind of holding that up to more of a better teaching than anything else that could be brought into the synagogue. So my wife and I just kind of stepped back without really confronting anything. But since my in-laws already had an established relationship and membership with them, they actually went to the quote unquote rabbis and confronted them
Oh,
about, asked about.
he actually called himself rabbi.
Yep,
I,
they
I,
were there was a rabbi and an associate rabbi.
oh my goodness. I guess we need to get him the t-shirt. What part of call no man rabbi don't you understand? Love Yeshua. It's like, come on, people. It's real simple here. But
And
yeah,
so my father-in-law being very
what's that?
sorry, my father-in-law being very biblical literalist, he went to them Matthew 18, talked to them about what he felt was wrong with the congregation, and they didn't repent of it. They didn't see anything wrong with Rick Warren or any of the other doctrines that they were starting to bring into it. And
Goodness
so
gracious.
the story that he tells is as he walked, he actually looked at the door frame of the office that they were at, and he kicked his shoes and left. So I always get a kick out of that story. Not
Oh,
the-
that's beautiful. Well, yeah, we've got all sorts of Chrislam, or yeah, and all sorts of stuff that's coming out of Warren. I mean, this is some crazy stuff that's happening, but the deception seems to keep on getting deeper. And you are committed to live the truth, to do the truth, to raise your family right, and we appreciate the work that you're doing, reaching out around the world. We don't know how much time we have on the internet, still free internet, but while we have it, I appreciate all the work that you're doing on that, Sal. So thank you for being with us. We appreciate it very much.
Thank you for having me. Shalom.
Now we're going to turn it back over to you, our sponsors out there. We have a word for you, and then we'll be back with our teaching in just a little bit.